Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel, Meet Me in the Center. My name is Andrew. This is actually Andrew from the future in a way. I filmed this whole series in one go a couple weeks ago, and for whatever reason this video corrupted. Don't ask, I don't know. I tried to recover it. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that, so I'm just refilming it. So continuity is going to be a little off in the series, but oh well, we'll just have to deal with that. So this is a continuation of my Earth conservation and global climate change series. This is going to be part 4, melting ice and other inconvenient truths. Is the ice melting? Well, yes, it is. Of course it is. Just like global climate change is happening, the ice cycle that is happening is also happening as well. And those two are directly connected to each other. If you think about it, if the temperature of the Earth is warmer, that means we're going to have less ice and more ice is going to melt. Whereas if the temperature is cooler, we're going to have a lot more ice and more ice will form. And so it is part of that whole natural cycle that comes with climate change. That being said, we are having an effect on it. We're just not sure how much of the effect is human made versus how much is natural. Right now we're coming from the last ice age. So right now is a period of natural warming on Earth, and which means that there's going to be natural ice melting too. If we weren't having an effect, there would be no cause for alarm because this happens naturally. It's happened naturally for millions and millions of years on Earth. That being said, what scientists are worried about is how much more we're going to do, how much more we're going to cause. And they are worried, and they are worried for good reason in that way. So there is a natural cycle. I just want to point out again, there is a natural cycle where the Earth heats up and cools down over millions of years. That cycle's been going on. The ice cycle is connected directly to that. Yes, that is happening, but we are also affecting that cycle. I guess the best way I can describe it is, let's say naturally the temperature is supposed to rise 2 degrees, but maybe humans are going to make it rise 5 degrees instead. That's the difference. The problem is we don't know how much is that natural rise in temperature and how much is human on top of. And in a way that's a problem. I'm going to cover that more in the next video though. Just as a rough idea, in the last ice age, approximately 25% of all of Earth's land was covered in ice. So we're coming from one extreme and we're heading to the other, which again is part of that natural cycle. We're just worried about our effect on how much worse we're going to make that cycle. I'm actually going to be releasing a visual aid all about this. I have a graph, and I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain, for instance, what it's looked like in the past and what we think is going to happen in the future. We're not entirely sure. Spoiler alert: we're not sure by any means, but there are a couple things that could happen, and I will highlight those. And that is going to be a video I release. I will put that in the description of this video, and it should be the next video. It'll be like it'll be called the glacial interglacial cycle, essentially. Visual aid. I'll call it something like that. But for now, why are we worried about this? Well, it could have, it does need to be watched. Believe it or not, melting ice can actually lead to another ice age. I know that seems counterintuitive, but it's actually what partially led to the last ice age that we were in. So if you think about it, when there's a lot of ice on the Earth, the sun's rays bounce off the ice because it's reflective, and those rays aren't absorbed by the Earth, so it stays colder. And the opposite of that, when there's less ice on the Earth, the rays are absorbed into the Earth, and it actually makes it warmer overall. So you would think that, well, since it starts to warm up and more ice melts, and because more ice melts, the UV rays in the sunlight has less to bounce off of, then it's just going to get warmer and warmer and warmer and go off in a crazy downward spiral towards just intense heat on Earth with no ice. Well, there have been times on Earth where there has been no ice, believe it or not, and well, we're still here and the Earth is still fine. That being said, we're not sure what our effect is going to be. So who knows? We could cause that, but like I said, we could actually cause another ice age as well. And so how does that work? Like I said, it seems very counterintuitive, because if you just keep melting ice, then more ice should just keep melting and it should just keep getting warmer. But this is actually something that happens with the ocean's currents. So the more fresh water you add to the oceans from ice melting off of, like, for instance, Greenland and Antarctica, as well as other glaciers around the world, it affects the amount of salt that's in the water. So a little science experiment to do, if you want to, is get a bowl, put some ice in it, and then fill the bowl halfway with water. At that point, taste the water to see how salty it is, and then fill the rest of the bowl with ice cubes and let them melt, and then stir the water again and taste it and see how salty it is then. It should be a lot less salty because there's been more water added and it dilutes the salt. Basic science explained by Andrew. But anyway, this change in the amount of salt actually affects the density, and that has been shown in the past to shut down the currents. And believe it or not, the last ice age, the current theory is that the last ice age was caused by two main factors. The first factor is that the distance from the sun to the Earth was a little larger. I explained that in my last video, and that would cause the Earth to be a little cooler. And also, the mid-Atlantic current shut off. And it's believed that those two factors are what caused the last ice age to happen when it did. So the mid-Atlantic current is a current that runs, obviously, in the Atlantic Ocean, mid-Atlantic even. And it basically brings warm, moist air and temperatures up further north to the east coast of US and Canada, and also to Europe. And it helps to keep the colder northern air at bay and hold it up north. And when that current shuts off, that northern cold air is allowed to travel much farther south and make it a lot colder in that area and cause a lot more snow and winter storms and stuff like that. Now, I don't want to worry people too much about all of this. It's not going to happen like it did in the movie The Day After Tomorrow. The Day After Tomorrow is a movie in which there were a bunch of the mid-Atlantic current shut down and there were a bunch of superstorms and it caused an immediate ice age. That's not how it works in real life. It takes thousands and thousands of years. It didn't happen overnight. So the ice sheet covering North America was over 1 kilometer thick. That didn't happen in one day. That took, like I said, thousands and thousands of years to get to that point. But something I want you to take away from all of this, and I don't think it should be forgotten, is it shows just how amazing the Earth is at balancing itself out. So if it's too hot, that can lead to an ice age. And eventually something will happen in that ice age that leads to it being warmer. And this process repeats and has repeated throughout history. In the last 500,000 years, it's happened 5 times, for instance. So I do have that graph, and I will be releasing it. So take a look at that if you want. It's a better visual aid when it comes to explaining this. I know I'm more of a visual learner for the most part, so I'm going to include that graph. And like I said, it will also explain, I'll also go more into detail about things like what we think our contributions are going to, what effects our contributions are going to have, essentially. So there are three different potential futures based on our contributions, and I will go over all of those and talk about which one I think is the most likely. So what are some of the other inconvenient truths about global climate change? Well, humans tend to flourish when average global temperatures increase, and this makes sense. So throughout history, your first job as a human was to be able to collect enough food, for your family and you to survive through the winter. Essentially, that was your number one primary role as a person. And if the temperatures are warmer, generally you have a higher crop yield because the crops grow better in the warm temperatures. Also, you may have longer before you have to harvest them, so you can grow more because that warmer temperature might hold off winter for a couple more weeks. So when we have seen these global temperature increases, that's actually when the European cathedrals started to be built. And that's when you see painting and other art forms flourishing because people have more time. They don't have to work as hard to get the same amount of food. So then they can use that other extra spare time to do other things like building cathedrals and painting. And as an opposite, when the average temperature go down, that's when you see a lot of the plagues and famines. Now, the plagues aren't caused by the temperature going down. It's not, that's an issue of correlation versus causation. So causation would be I do this and this happens. Correlation means there's a connecting factor between the plagues and the average temperature going down. And it makes sense if you think about it. So whereas if in the warmer temperatures crops flourish, in the cooler temperatures crops don't grow as well. And you don't have as long to harvest crops. So you have less food, you have to work harder to make the same amount of food you did when it was warmer. So there's going to be less crops, there's going to be famine, there's going to be more starving people, there's going to be way more stress, which all leads to compromised immune systems. Now, not all plagues happen in the cooler temperatures. The 2019 pandemic was a good example of something that didn't happen during the cooler temperatures. We're at a fairly warm point. But most of them have, if you look throughout history. And that's not to say, again, that if someone brought a plague, that it wouldn't hit during warmer temperatures too. It just hits harder during these cooler temperatures. And actually, when the Earth started to cool again, that's when we actually saw the stopping of the building of the cathedrals as well. So they started when it started to warm, and then suddenly the Earth got a little cooler again, and the construction on the cathedrals had to stop. Those are a couple little interesting things that are, again, correlated to the difference in temperature. So the thing I want you to take most away from all of this is, so there is a natural cycle that happens on Earth. It is natural. It happens. And it has been happening for millions of years, if not longer, possibly into the billions, where the Earth starts to cool down and then it starts to warm up again. Ice starts to significantly form, and then it starts to melt. That's all natural. That's been happening. We are naturally in one of those processes now where the Earth is naturally warming up and ice is naturally melting. That being said, we are also having an effect on top of that, and we unfortunately don't know how much of an effect we're having, and that's something we need to figure out. And I'm going to be talking about that more in the next video. So if you like this video, comment, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Until then.